Hey everybody, hope this finds you doing well. This is Danelle. Thank you so much for tuning in here with us at Networkchain. As usual, we're going to go ahead and start with the cryptocurrency market update. As you can see, Bitcoin is on its way down, particularly over the last hour. It's almost 1% down. Over the last 7 days, it's down 3%. It's just trading right under $63,000 at $62,760. We have Ethereum currently trading at $3,229. It's actually up 2.6% over the past week. Then as we go down the rest of the top 10, we see Solana is down to $136.47, currently down over 7% over the past week. Then we have XRP still trading in that 50-cent range. Dogecoin, the top meme coin of them all, currently trading at 14 cents. It's actually down over 7.6%. And we can see Cardano is back in the top 10. It's currently trading at 45 cents and it is down 7.82% over the past week. So what we have been seeing over the past week or so with Bitcoin and some of these other cryptocurrencies, they have been kind of ranging since the Bitcoin halving of last weekend. And as we can see here, if we look at the weekly chart, and sometimes it helps to just kind of zoom out a little bit just to get a little bit more perspective as to where we are in the market. As we know, Bitcoin basically moves in a 4-year cycle. We just had the halving, which happens every 4 years. And so now what we generally see, at least history has shown us, that Bitcoin will reach all-time highs and usually have major moves after the Bitcoin halving. As we discussed last week in our last video, this was a little bit of a different story because of the Bitcoin ETFs. We actually had a all-time high before the Bitcoin halving. So this is the weekly chart, and as you can see here, we had an all-time high in March, which was before the Bitcoin halving that we just had last weekend. So we don't know what's going to happen moving forward. Obviously, historical performance is not going to necessarily be an indication of what the future performance is going to be, but we do use it as a guide. And since none of us knows what the future holds, we don't know exactly what's going to happen now that we've had the halving. But if we do go off of the history of Bitcoin, there's a possibility that we could go much higher. So it actually could be good for Bitcoin and for the cryptocurrency market to cool off a little bit, because we had such a major run so far in 2024, really going back to mid or really the beginning of 2023, to see us go from the $16,000 range all the way up to $73,000 in a little over a year. We definitely need to cool off a little bit, and it's actually pretty good for the market if we do see some pulling back. We can't know exactly what's going to happen because, as you can see with history back here, there were a lot of things that ended up really probably causing Bitcoin crashing a little bit sooner than most people expected. But so anything could potentially come about moving forward. So you always have to be very careful when you're doing investing, when you're trading. Obviously, you want to be very careful with what you decide to do. But at the end of the day, we here at Networkchain just want to make sure that we give you as much information as possible. Hopefully you can have an idea of where to start when it comes to where to look and doing your due diligence and deciding whether or not you're going to invest and trade in cryptocurrencies, because as we've mentioned many times before, it's very volatile. As you can see here, it can have major moves up and it makes a lot of people a lot of money, but it also can lose a lot of people a lot of money depending on when you get in and when you get out. We're here as long-term investors. We believe in Bitcoin as a store of value against the US dollar and other fiat currencies in the world. But it's obviously up to you to make sure that you make your own decisions when it comes to your financial future. Either that, you do it yourself, or you get a professional advisor. One of the catalysts that made Bitcoin move the way that it did, having that all-time high before the Bitcoin halving, as we know, is the Bitcoin spot ETFs that were approved and started trading in the market in January. So as we can see, Grayscale is continuing to have a lot of outflows. We see over $17 billion has now flowed out of that trust, now spot Bitcoin ETF. They've lost about half of their assets since the start of trading, and we now see that BlackRock, their iShares Bitcoin Trust, is likely going to be the one that holds the most amount of assets, the most amount of Bitcoin out of these ETFs. As you can see, it's getting close to flipping grayscale sometime soon. Now, a lot of people have been a little bit concerned, particularly over this past week, because after the halving, the Bitcoin trust from BlackRock has actually seen the first time negative inflows. Now, for 71 consecutive days, it actually became a top 10 ETF in terms of the positive inflows that came in for consecutive days, trading days, and it had gone 71 days without having a negative inflow. So basically that means that you had more buyers than sellers. And so finally, just over this past week, we saw some sellers take over the buyers. And so we did have a negative inflow. And you can see here some of the other spot Bitcoin ETFs and the amount of holdings that they have. So if we go to the total flows here, as you can see, the total amount of assets that are being held by the Bitcoin ETFs, excluding GBTC, is over $34 billion. So that's going to show that over $34 billion of new demand has come into the Bitcoin industry, into the Bitcoin space, into the Bitcoin asset. And if you look at that, and this has only happened in 70 plus days of trading, what are we going to look like towards the end of the year? Obviously, we will keep you posted. There's a lot of other great resources, some Bloomberg analysts that do a really great job of posting on X about everything that's happening on a daily basis. There's some other great content creators as well that go into the volumes and the inflows and outflows of these spot Bitcoin ETFs. So feel free to do your research when it comes to that if you want to learn a little bit more about what's happening with regards to the demand from these spot Bitcoin ETFs. But there's no doubt that they have had an effect on the Bitcoin price. So we will keep you posted as much as we can with regards to what's happening in that regard. But it's definitely an indicator that there is more demand coming into the Bitcoin space. And speaking of more demand coming into the Bitcoin space, as we've also mentioned, Hong Kong was looking to make an announcement regarding the launch of spot Bitcoin ETFs, and they're going to launch Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs. And from what we understand, it looks like next week, or this week really, is going to be the start of the Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs that are going to be coming onto the market in Hong Kong. Many people speculate that mainland China will be using some of these ETFs out of Hong Kong to get exposure to the cryptocurrency space. So we see here that the Hong Kong regulators last week had approved the launch of the spot Bitcoin and Ether exchange traded funds. And this is likely going to bring more demand into the cryptocurrency space as a whole, but particularly obviously into Bitcoin and Ethereum. So we shall see if it's going to have the same type of effect of the US spot Bitcoin ETFs. It's not likely to have as much of the demand in regards to the total amount of flows. When we looked at having over $34 billion, excluding Grayscale coming in to the cryptocurrency market. So it's probably not going to be that amount, but we could definitely see billions and billions of dollars coming from the Asia market. And this is just the beginning. So we were likely going to see more regulators from other countries as well, especially if we start to see and continue to see the demand and the success of these ETFs. Of course, there are going to be other countries that are going to be interested in getting involved as well. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. So lastly, just an interesting story. An Epic Sat is a Satoshi that is mined, the first Satoshi, which we know the Satoshi is the denomination of Bitcoin. So the first Satoshi that was mined after the Bitcoin halving is considered an Epic Sat. So there's only 4 because we've had 4 Bitcoin halvings. So this is the 4th Epic Sat. And so it is a very rare and now is considered a collectible. And that particular Sat, which is currently worth, as you can see here, 0.00065 cents, has now been sold at an auction for over $2.1 million. As you can see, it was sold for 33.3 Bitcoin, and it was sold by an auction done by CoinX Global, and it took about 5 days for this to be sold. And you can see here the auction, which was commenced April 22nd, shortly after the halving, saw 34 bids, and the SAT number is this number that you can see here. And it's very interesting that the starting price was at 1 Bitcoin, and it finally sold at 33.3 Bitcoin. So that is obviously a major sale. Many people are seeing that there are different ways to find value using not only Satoshi with the ordinal projects that are out now, which are inscriptions on a Satoshi. We also are seeing runes, which took the transaction fees for Bitcoin to the highest it's ever been over the past weekend when the Bitcoin halving happened, because there was so much congestion, so much interest in joining, or I should say mining runes on Bitcoin, which are now basically the ability to have different types of meme coins on the Bitcoin network. So there's a lot that's developing on Bitcoin. We can see that there's a lot of interest in Bitcoin, as well as these Satoshis and ordinals and runes. So we'll continue to keep you posted on this as well if we find some more interesting news stories related to this area of the Bitcoin network. But once again, Bitcoin is just getting started, so we'll keep you locked on what we find, and make sure that you stay tuned with us, not only on X, we post there nearly every day, but also on Instagram, because we want to make sure that you know what's going on as up to date as possible. So in the meantime, you please take care of yourself. We thank you so much for watching. In the meantime, take care. We look forward to linking up with you soon on the network chain. Bye-bye.